Welcome back, beautiful people. This is another episode of An Untold Narrative, and hopefully you're watching on YouTube because we had a beautiful entrance by our guest today. Bryce Wong is an unbelievable top-tier footwear designer, but also an impeccable creative tattoo artist, skateboarder. I mean, the list of things that you do literally keeps going on like a CVS receipt. And so I'm just really jazzed up and honored that you took the time to hang out and talk to us about your life and your career and your design pursuits and life and everything else. So thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, dude, of course. Any reason to talk about myself? I'm taking it.
I love that. I love that. One thing, with people like yourself who, you can look up your name and you'll see the magazines and the publications of the hype beasts and the sneaker freakers of the world where you'll get recognition for your work. But like, what do you think is like the most understood thing about you? Or do you think like you're pretty transparent in who you are and how you act?
I'd say I try to be as transparent as possible. I think the thing that I hope comes across is that I do a lot of the work that I do for myself. I do a lot of the work that I do for fun to balance myself. I mean, it's a job that I do, but it's also something that's like inherently built into who I am. And the creativity that I like kind of put out in the world is, I'd say 80, 85, 90% for me. And the rest is, to try and pay my mortgage and um, just put some stuff out there. But I think the thing that is the most known about me is that I love hot dogs. That's, that was unintentional. That's truly just an expression of what I do online. So it's a weird world.
Yeah, so probably like maybe even for your average person, that's probably the thing they'd want to keep unknown about them. But you make it very clear that you love Costco hot dogs.
I mean, dude, loud and proud about it,
I mean, I do want to circle back. You said you do a lot of the work that you do for yourself. Like, and all the creators who listen to this, obviously struggle with finding the balance of doing work for whether it's, payment or their job or whatever it is a secret to your success and happiness, like the fact that you just only work on or primarily only work on stuff that like ticks your box and makes your gears like operate and like gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, I think that there is an absolute balance to it. And if I said I did only what I do for me all the time, that would be just kind of impossible, unless I was very, very independently wealthy. Um, but I think the thing that kind of drives me is that I always love creating things, and whether that's for somebody to create commercially, like that's awesome, or whether it's just something that hangs in a friend's house or even in just in my art archives for myself, like I just love doing that. So to me, that's a lot of what drives me. Like honestly, the Nike job in itself like is a great perk, but I mean, oftentimes I'm like, man, what if I were to just like leave design altogether? Like I'd still be doing a lot of art on the side, not like undoubtedly, but you know, a lot of people look at the career and say like, oh, that defines what you do and who you are. But to me, like that was just it was just something that happened because I liked creating stuff, and then that became noticed and kind of like capitalized on for my job. But yeah, honestly, if I was working data entry, I'd still be doing art on the side, like no doubt.
That's so it's cool that you have like something that roots you, right? And that you can always go back to like find that self-fulfillment aspect, regardless of what your actual, let's quote unquote 9 to 5 is and becomes. And the fact that it is
Yep.
creative and the fact that it does, have this massive exposure for people to even wear or interact with, obviously has huge upsides. Is there if you were to change, like, have you thought about like where you would go? Because I was actually having this conversation last week with somebody and I'm like, what if I left design and I wanted to like devote my entire life to being an astronaut? Like, is that possible? And so like then I even Googled like what does it take to be an astronaut? And it's like the selection process is like 1%. Like 1% of all applicants like get selected, which is crazy. And then you have to meet height requirements. Like you can't be over 6'3" or over 6'2". You can't be under something. It's like, it's wild.
Sounds like I'm out already.
So like, have you thought about like what you would do if it wasn't design?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And honestly, I think, you know, I haven't put a ton of thought into it. And I always like to make jokes of like, hey, yo, it'd be really funny if I just like moved to Ohio and started like doing like old bookbinding restoration kind of like random craft things. And I do think that like that would be kind of fun. You know, if I was being realistic, like, you know, my mom recently got a job after like 20 years of just being a stay-at-home mom, and she works at a like a home goods store, kind of like selling like well designed objects. I'm like, that sounds awesome. Like I have an appreciation for product and storytelling, and like I think I could really just like shoot the shit like this about a lamp or something like that. So you know, it's something around where I could appreciate objects. Maybe a museum. It'd be cool to be like I don't know, a buyer for like the MoMA, for
Mm.
like their like gift shop, or even just somebody who's working in like, I don't know, prop archival for like movies or something, like just something where I could get my hands on stuff that I don't have to like always just be behind a screen.
Mm.
Um, but really, in reality, like I think there's the side of me right now that I'm just creating a lot of stuff, and I think that my mind goes to something that can just totally appreciate the stuff that people are creating. Like
So
that's maybe a job that I would like.
you do have this, you know, just because I know you through our mutual friend Dave a little bit, and like I've had the fortune of even spending a little bit of time at your house, and like you have this like grassroots like feel to your life outside of like the creative aspect. Like you guys raise chickens and stuff. Like you have this very like, I think you've built a sauna in your backyard, or maybe I'm mistaken.
Yeah, we do have
Like
a sauna back there now.
like you have this very like, I don't know, like fundamental like human life of like appreciation of things. And so like if you did move to Ohio and did bookbinding, that wouldn't surprise me, right?
Wouldn't surprise me either.
Yeah, so like it's kind of really a really fun mental conversation with yourself. And um but you've had the success obviously through the design side, which obviously people are interested in. Do you think there's one thing that separates you from other creators in the footwear design space or the art space or something else? Like, is there like a through line with the Bryce Wong like criteria of things that you put out into the world that makes your work maybe better or more appreciated than others?
Well, I think the thing that makes my work appreciated more than others is pure luck. You know, I work hard, but like exposure is like a very lucky thing, you know, like you can look at a ton of different things, and you know, every single one of them could be awesome, and but if you can only pick one to kind of focus on, you know, that's kind of luck, you know. Doesn't mean it's better than anybody else, but what I would say that I have found over the years that I think does separate me a little bit from like the traditional footwear designer, or even just like just designer in general, is that I've never been fixated on like one thing. I've never been like, yo, I'm full in on furniture. I am 100% in on footwear. Um, like, you know, everybody says like, be curious, be curious. And to me, like, I would agree with that. But I also say like, again, like have an appreciation for everything. You know, no matter what it is, well designed, poorly designed, somebody had to put thought into that. Um, you know, there's so many things you can appreciate, and I think that kind of all culminates together in like having good perspective and being able to have good insights into whatever project you're working on. You can pull from many different things. You know, I love movies, I love toys, I love, you know, all kinds of pop culture things, as well as like some of this like the maybe a little bit more like lesser known things. But they all kind of help me think through projects and kind of
Mm.
apply different aspects to what I'm working on. And what I've seen a lot is like with younger designers, they get so fixated on, I want to do this one thing so bad. All I know is this. So when you do that, it's very limited because you're not able to bring anything new to the table. And, and I think that like you do a really great job of that as well. Like your own paintings, the fact that you're doing a podcast and listening to others, like that in itself, you're going to become a better designer because of that, just on your own. Like just having that insight and the perspective from others and trying other different things and exploring. Like a lot of people won't do that because they're afraid to fail or they're afraid that the thing won't pop off. But that's just never going to happen if you don't even try it. So
I mean, I'm such a fan of this conversation because you're 1,000% correct. It's really the fear-based stuff that holds people back. But what I'm really curious about extracting in this is for the creative that's listening, that's maybe like middle of the road, who has that. What's something that you do to your work in footwear design from other worlds, from other creative aspects, that like what's something tangible somebody can take out of this conversation of like, okay, I know Bryce loves skateboarding, but he doesn't work in SB anymore. He works in, like the digital side of the business. Like how is, maybe not a direct example to the work, but like something holistically, like how do people implement other creative aspects into one specific niche?
that's a great question. If I were to like try to just answer that off the top, the the best way that I can kind of think about that is, the first thing is I would go to approach. Like when you're when you're going into a design process, oftentimes you can get stuck, you can get blocked, you can kind of like get a little just like buried in one lane again, like with that like too much focus, right?
You can, yeah.
And a lot of the things that I do, like with skateboarding, and I'm not much of a skater these days, more jujitsu, some rock climbing, like different activities. But what I've kind of found is there's micro adjustments to be made in every one of these sports, that like you can implement into your design process. Like if I'm not gonna talk about jujitsu because that would be a dangerous path for me to go down. But like let's go to like bouldering,
Okay.
which I'm very bad at, but I go with my friends and I love it. Sometimes the path that you think you should be taking, like when some people can do it that way, doesn't mean that your body type can do it, right? So you have to find different ways to adjust even if you're blocked. So like how that works into like design processes is, let's say you go, okay, I have a brief, so I'm going to build a mood board and I'm going to start sketching with my pencil in a sketchbook. And that's how I'm going to start my process. But sometimes you sit there and you sketch a million sketches, they end up being the same sketch over and over again. And sometimes just because that's the way that you've been told that's the way to do it, doesn't mean you can't go and take some magazine clippings and make a collage, or go and do some like kind of freeform like paint aspect, like get some blobs going, and like get some inspiration from that shape. That's the kind of thing where it's like make those adjustments. And just because there's one way that somebody once told you that they did it, doesn't mean that has to be the way that you do it. And like I really only learned that from doing these other sports, like just realizing that everybody's a little different, things work better for you in certain ways. I mean, that's like the most vague like way that I could put using other like experiences to amplify how you design.
No, I think it's a tremendous perspective, and I think it goes back to like trying new things and being the curious aspect. And again, it's maybe even stated these days. Everyone's like, oh, just be curious about stuff, but like ultimately, people are like, I don't know if I should be trying rock climbing or bouldering, but like that doesn't have to be it, right? It can be reading or scrapbooking or sewing with your mom on the weekend. It could be like a zillion things.
Yeah, I mean, right now everybody seems to be defined by being like multi-hyphenate, or like you go to my Instagram and it says footwear designer, and all of a sudden I have to be only a footwear designer to be relevant and like have my name stick. But in reality, like, back in the day, yeah, I used to, you can sew with your mom. That's a big portion of my life that like helped me make shoes, right? But like, I'm not putting like seamstress with my mother on my Instagram, but like that's still something I can enjoy doing, without having to define myself by that. I think people get so caught up in like DJ or musician or designer or artist that like you forget like, oh, maybe I can still be inspired by, I mean, building a little dirt bike, and that can still help me inform on how I design.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I need to be like a dirt bike mechanic. That just means that that's another hobby that can help amplify what I'm doing in my main kind of like job or career.
I also think
So
it's important to state that like you can do or try a lot of things and tinker with things, but you don't have to always show those things, right? Like I think in the social era that we live in, like you probably do 15 things that nobody even knows that you touch, right? And so it's like I think that's important that like just because you try something doesn't mean you have to share it. I do think like potentially showing your failures is actually really beneficial to actually just build up like self-confidence and endurance. But it's just like it's a conversation each individual has to have with themselves.
totally. And like that's kind of the fun, and funny thing about like social media. I think you do it as well. Like not everybody would put up like a 2-hour process of painting, like that's something that people might just try and hide away, do present the final product. But like just being open and showing your process, and hey, maybe it's not perfect, or maybe you messed up and you have to fix it, and you're like, it like messes up the video halfway through because like I gotta like go back in, and it's not just like a perfect thing like process, right? But just putting it out there is awesome. It's relatable, and like when I see that, I'm like, oh, I'm inspired to like start painting again, or like stuff like that. I feel like that is what's cool about social media, which is like usually the antithesis of what people think, right? They're like,
Hmm.
social media is like what is like a perfect idealized version of what you're doing. But it's also like a very easy platform to just be like, yo, this is what I'm up to. I'm going to build a mini ramp today, and then tomorrow I'm going to go build a coop for my chickens, and then the next day I'm going to smoke out of a hot dog, right? Like it's not about perfection, it's just about putting stuff out there that people can appreciate and relate to. And um I think that's like the cool thing. Like you can use the platforms to like expose all the things you're doing too. um but also, yeah, not being afraid of failure, that's like kind of the thing, because like if you were afraid of people hating on a painting that you were doing, then it might deter you from posting it. But
Right.
if you're just doing it for you and it's something you love doing, and then you're happy with the result, then like fuck it, why not just put up the video?
So
So
I got an
yeah,
immediate question
it's
that pops in my head, Bryce. So where did you build up your self-confidence, right? Because like clearly you don't even show your tattoo work, which I know you're an incredible tattoo artist, or like you show paintings sometimes in prints and stuff, but like you don't have that fear. And so like where does your confidence or like, how did you become who you are? Is a boiled down question.
it's a long journey to it. I think I've always been a little bit more of like a class clown, kind of like you can't put me in a box kind of guy. um I've always just like done what I wanted to. But I think the real thing that clinched that was when I tell this story a lot. So I'll try and keep it brief, but it happened like when I was in my first internship. I was working at Vans down in California, and I was really not feeling great about my work at school, and I was like a little bit less adjusted and being like, okay, I don't want to put everything out there. um I was skating with my buddy, Jordan Nielsen, who is an amazing designer, and really just like awesome human being. He kind of pulled me aside while we were skating, and I was just like, we're talking, and I was like, I'm just, I'm a little like nervous. There's a lot of like awesome skaters here. He himself is insane skater. Um, so he was like a person who's just like, do you care what other people think? And I was like, no, not really. He's like, because I'm gonna tell you right now, like the person over there trying to like kickflip off that ledge is worried more about kickflipping off that ledge than they are about you fucking up that like ollie down a little set, right? Whatever. um he's like, as long as you, he's like, are you enjoying yourself? And I was like, yeah, I am enjoying myself, I love skating. And he was like, as long as you're enjoying yourself, it doesn't matter. And majority of the people out there are not caring about you, they're caring about themselves. So just go do what you want. And like that just kind of clicked to my brain because of where I was at with my design career too. Like I was so bogged down by trying to design the way that people were telling me I needed to design, be like Dieter Rams, and try and like do all this like fancy, simplistic, clean line design stuff. And you know, it just wasn't really me. So when he gave me that advice, it just like changed my whole perspective. I was like, yeah, like nobody cares about me, so I might as well just like do what I want. And you know, and the people who do start to like trickle in and get eyes on the stuff I'm doing, like hopefully it's authentic because it's stuff that I really like to do. So that was like the big thing. It wasn't even from design. Again, like that wasn't from a design conversation. That was from a skateboarding insecurity conversation that changed my whole like perspective on how I approach creativity.
And that again, it's like, this is such a like full circle conversation. It's like that conversation about insecurity wouldn't have happened if you even didn't explore skateboarding or like didn't do other things. Exactly. Right. So it's like people got to realize that like these things happen in these moments that you create opportunities for. So but it's ultimately, I always go back to like, there's that root of like the fear and like how to get people out of that. And like, that's something I personally haven't solved. You know, a lot of people ask about that because like I don't have it, right? Like you don't have it. Like you've had this moment where it clicked. Finding that click moment for other people is I think it's just an experience thing. I don't know if it can be, if you can watch 5,000 YouTubes saying the same thing, if that'll click for you. I don't know.
I think it's just a good way to start thinking about like looking at your other experiences and how you can apply it to where you want to be, right? And it's just taking like the scariest things. I mean, okay, ultimately putting stuff out there can be scary, but at the same time, like it takes reps of like some fear to get over it, right? It's like skating down a stair set and being like, okay, this is horrifying, but you do it once or twice and you're like, okay, I think I can do this. You know, it's kind of like that, just like to just take the jump, just like take the first few steps, and you'll find that the consequences really aren't like that much. Maybe one person comments some stupid thing on an Instagram post, but then you're like, I don't really know this person at all. I mean, unless it's your mom commenting something, but like, you know what I mean? Like for the most part, you're just like, who are you and why do you care so much? You know? And that's like, I think a little bit of how I approach things.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I love that. Hopefully people take note and try, right? Like just experiment and do a couple new things. What's been the hardest part of your youthful journey so far? Like if you had to like go deep inside Bryce's brain of like a moment, or another critical conversation, less about, you know, insecurity and fear, but like, is there a moment in your life so far where it was really just like a pivotally difficult time for you and it shifted how your brain operates in the way that you think about life in general? Because like I can tell just based on our conversation, like you have a deep sense of appreciation for like knowing how people think and like where their attention goes and, you know, how to extract certain things. Like, was there another light switch moment for you in life?
There's, I mean, a million light switch moments. I think a big thing, you know, I want to give a shout out here to my wife, Mariah, who is an amazing artist and creative herself. You know, the other thing is, I mean, I guess the things that I can go back to is like that hustle and grind culture. Um, and like how you operate within that. My wife she's an amazing creative in that like when she creates things, she goes full force, but then at the same time, like she really has this like off switch that allows her to chill out, take a moment to breathe and appreciate the things around her, um and relax. And that's something that I didn't have in my life. um Everybody is just trying to be part of this like kind of rat race thing, and everybody talks about like the grind culture stuff, but and there's a time and place for it, and I don't think that that's something you could be like, nah, forget grind culture, like you gotta like just chill and things will fall in place. No, like sometimes you do have to grind, but on the flip side of that, you have to take rest days, you have to take time for yourself to focus on other hobbies and care less about that and put your time and energy into something else. um what I didn't, because I was burning the candle at both ends. Like it was 2016, 2017. I was like, let's go. I gotta do some crazy stuff. I gotta be the man. I have to build this and that and design this and that. And and I was finding a lot of roadblocks, and my mental health was definitely drained. Um, but I was like trying to chase something that I didn't even know where the end was.
Hmm.
And I was tired. I was kind of grumpy and lost. And when I started dating my wife, she'd be like, come sit on the couch, come hang out with me, like let's take a second to breathe and
Hmm.
like chill. Let's marathon this Netflix show because we can, and we should just do that sometimes. And that was a big click to me too, because like, what happens if you grind and you make it to the top, but you're pissed at life, you're tired, and you have no mental space to do anything else? You're going to be pretty miserable, even though you've made it, right? And like, also like in this culture, like when have you made it? You never make it. So like, if you're constantly grinding and you're never taking a breath, you'll burn out quick. And I think that's a big thing that has like helped center me. I mean, you talked about the chickens already. We talked about all the hobbies we do on the side. Like, that's all because I just want to diversify and enjoy my life. And
Hmm.
yeah, I can have moments of grind, um, but make sure that you have goals on the backside of that grind. And if you reach those goals, then boom, take a vacation, go try a new hobby. Um, just like chill out sometimes, and I can say that now after I've like
Of
got to the gig
course.
at night after
But
but
it's I
um
appreciate you sharing the moment with your now wife, and how she kind of pulled you back a little bit. It's a tough conversation to have with someone too, right? Like, because you see how into that passion they are and into that grind they are, and like you don't want to tweak them the wrong way either, but like to have it bring you back to like center and like recognize that, hey, like this is such a huge part of who you are, but like you need to learn how to appreciate the things around you as well, is it's not an easy conversation to have with somebody.
no, not at all. And I think like what it kind of comes down to is like, what are you shooting for? You know what I mean? Like, if if my wife Mariah, if she was like, I'm going into a time period where I'm like hustling really hard, and her goal was to sell some art pieces and like gain a little bit of a following or whatever, and there was like, and it was purely for her, then I'd be like, cool, hustle and grind until you are satisfied. But if she was like, I'm just trying to pop off and be big and like build this thing, and like, if it's like, if the reasons aren't like super genuine to herself, then I would be like, hey, maybe we should take a break. But if it's true, if I think that like, if I see that the passion is there and there's like an attainable goal in mind, I'd be like, cool, go do your thing. I'll support you. Go do that thing. But like, I think a lot of people these days are like, I just want to be the next Virgil. I want to be the next big thing. I want to be huge. Um, but maybe it's not for the right reasons. Then I'd be like, yo, maybe you just need to chill a little bit.
Do you
Like,
ever do you
rethink
ever
why you're on
translate
it.
do you ever translate that same thought process to like the people around you at work, or like the people that you interact with? Because like I think that like sentiment is so beautiful, and like in a really tactful way, right? Like just understanding what's the why behind something, or what's the intent. Like you get a brief at work and you're like, well, okay, like I think we need to strengthen the why here, or I think I need to strengthen the story around the end consumer. Like I think there's things that you can easily apply to like a career or anybody's job, with these situations.
Absolutely. I try and be smart about who I talk to about this type of thing, because I don't want to come off as like what you're doing is wrong and what I'm doing is right.
Mm.
Because just like we kind of touched on before, everybody's a little bit different, and that's what works for me. Um, and one day when I'm leading a larger team, if I'm leading a larger team, if I ever get that opportunity, or I'm able to influence like briefs like that, kind of like work collaboratively, yeah, that's when I like start to bring in a little bit of these thoughts. But I try and know my place a little bit. You know what I mean? I'm not overreaching. I'm not trying to like be a mentor to everybody, especially people
Mm.
who like are actually making decisions. But that's kind of the attitude I bring for myself, and I hope that like in projects that rubs off. I'm always there to question why we're doing something, or pivot and adjust, because I think it just makes for a better product, better projects together, better collaborations. But again, I got to know my lane a little bit, and I try not to
No, I
preach
think
too
I think
much. But
I think we all do, right? And I think that's again, it goes like, I love your self-awareness. It's like there's no like one like golden goose egg of knowledge and things anybody should do and apply it, right? There's just like bits and pieces that people can extract from these sorts of conversations. I do want to spend the last few minutes, Bryce, talking about how important physical activity is, because for myself as a creative, and I see it through you, I see it through a lot of our mutual peers and colleagues and friends. As a creative, I've seen that some of the best designers and artists are actually people who have an appreciation for sport and movement, whether that's jujitsu, as you mentioned, bouldering, myself, running, tennis. I see it across the board, and this is just my thesis. But I think if somebody has an outlet that's physical and around movement and like getting in a different headspace completely, it actually helps the creative process. What's like your thoughts around that?
yeah, I think that that's true. And I think that like as designers who sit in front of a computer and are hunched over like this all day, like maybe some movement is like necessary for us to like maybe have some longevity sitting at a desk. So from that aspect, I think sport and movement is great. But in all honesty, I think that you can substitute movement and sport with anything that you could consider like your third place. You
Mm.
could substitute it with board games. You could substitute it with karaoke. I don't know, but like I think there's something to having a space where you're with people who don't do what you do, like from a career standpoint. You're with people who are fully invested into whatever hobby you're doing. And then with you're doing a hobby or a sport, or hanging with people who challenge your way of thinking.
Mm.
Um so to me, like sport is a great one because it activates a lot of those things. It's like kind of the obvious one that you can get into that is so separate. I'm training jujitsu with civil engineers, lawyers, full-time martial artists, kids who are like living with their parents doing really nothing. And it's so sick to just like get that perspective, have some friends who aren't just sitting there being like, yo, did you see that shoe design? Crazy. Sometimes you just want to be like, yo, don't talk to me about designing stuff for a second. Like, talk about running or how to climb this wall. Those are the types of things that I think like get you out of that mindset. And again, like there is definitely a theme to this conversation, is like applying perspectives and time away from your craft to sharpen your mind, your outlook, and then apply it back to where you're like actually trying to work on. So I think that that's like what I would say about having those external activities, is whether it's sport or something else.
Mm.
finding that community outside of kind of your norm is very helpful, and might be uncomfortable, but that's kind of what will get you going. That discomfort is really interesting and really cool. So like, don't be afraid to put yourself in weird situations. And then you can always bring that back, and it might help your work if that helps you justify starting jujitsu or like signing up at a bouldering gym or taking a 2-mile run.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, dude, I love the theme of this conversation as a whole. It's been really fun and educational and informative. Um, as we wrap up, Bryce, is there something, do you have anything to share with anybody? It could be a piece of advice that you've been thinking about. It could be just a topic on your brain in the new year. It could be what's next for Bryce. Is there a project that you've either, have coming inside work or outside of work, or anything top of mind that you just want to leave people with?
Anything top of mind? I mean, there's a million things, like, just like I keep going forever about things that I could like give advice on. I'm going into a year where I'm trying to build a lot of things, and like multiple things. And what I've been kind of finding is that like, you don't have to fill your cup with any one project. One project doesn't have to satisfy your creativity, your business, the business side of your brain. It doesn't have to fulfill the active side. You can compartmentalize things and find that balance and work on one thing while you slowly do this other thing. And then when it's like just finding the sliding scales and the balances of like what you're working on. I think a lot of people put so much stake into one project changing their life, and that happens very rarely. So yeah, I think just like get after what you love, like make the time to fill your cup in many different ways, and enjoy what you're doing at the end of the day, because that's what's gonna like keep you in it. That
That's
was like
awesome.
5 different things, but
Now
yeah,
it's
that's what I've been thinking about.
it's a great way to start the new year, and it's a great way to end this and wrap up this conversation. Bryce, last note: where can people find you, follow along those new and exciting things, and then also plug in your wife's handle, because she does some amazing work as well.
Yeah, you guys can check my work out at Bryce Wong on Instagram, 3 B's. And then my wife's work is Dumb Glass on Instagram as well. Other than that, like, check the sneakers app, and hopefully some of my work will be on there as well.
Yeah, I
But
mean, we didn't talk about your amazing history of design work, but people can Google that. It's very visible on the internets. Thanks for chatting with us about other things that are all life encompassing. So this has been a lot of fun, Bryce.
yeah, dude, thank you for having me. It's been really cool.